Hey, She Slayers, and welcome to another episode of She Slays the Day podcast. I am your host, Dr. Lauryn Brunslick. Okay, so I have another good one for you. You're going to love it. I promise you're going to love it. So today I have a non Chiro on, but he describes himself as one of the profession's biggest groupies, and he is founder of the Chiropractic Defense Council. I don't want to spoil what that is. Its abbreviation is the CDC, though, which is it's tongue in cheek and cute. But before we dig into this really cool thing that's happening in our profession, just a couple like main takeaways that I have gotten from the multi passionate chiropreneur this week. Okay. So, one, for those of you who live in a big town, you may not be familiar with a term that you should know. And this is, well, I guess it's not really a term. It's the description of, are you the town with the Walmart in it? Okay. Now, you will instantly, this is the like epitome of if you know, you know. If you are in a town where you're like, what? We have a Walmart. We actually have 3, you don't know what I'm talking about, and you do not get to go around saying you live in a small town. I am declaring right now as Miss Slays, I didn't tell you that the last when I was at Amy Spolstra's conference, I got, introduced as Miss Slays. I usually am quite defensive of when somebody calls me like Miss Brunslick. I'm like, it's Dr. Brunslick. I'm not like a Mrs. Brunslick. But Miss Slays was like, oh yeah, I'll get that embroidered on a jean jacket. Anyways, what were we talking about? Oh, yes. You do not get to say. I am declaring you do not get to say you are from a small town. The only people who will henceforth get to go forward saying they work or live in a small town are those that can say, yep, we're the town with the Walmart in it, which not to brag, but Rice Lake is. Rice Lake, we're the town that people drive to because we have the Walmart and the Menards and now Starbucks. But I'm not bragging. I'm not bragging. Or if you live in a town that doesn't have the Walmart and you have to drive to the other town, then you really get to say you truly live in small town America. Now, one thing, speaking of small town America, I had a point to it that I didn't get a chance to bring up to Bharon today. And if he's re listening to this episode, which I hope he is, well, it sounds like he's kind of busy. He's got a lot of fights he's fighting. So maybe he's not our guy. But who would be the person we would like sign a petition to start advocating for chiropractors to be enrolled in like the rural student loan forgiveness thing that other doctors get? Like, I'm not a big chip on my shoulder type of person anymore. I definitely was. But did you know that, like, I'm pretty sure dentists and vets, if they move to a low socioeconomic area, like the town with a Walmart in it or the town without a Walmart, that their loans get forgiven earlier. So now hear me out. I'm not just bitching here. I actually think that this would help solve a problem for a lot of chiropractors across America who are looking for associates. It's difficult. Like there are like San Diego, Fort Collins, Dallas, no, Nashville, and there's probably like 3 or 4 other cities that students are clamoring or graduates are clamoring to get to, and I'm happy for them. I really am. But I don't have mountains or ocean near me or a bustling town. Oh, I forgot to say Austin. Oh my gosh. So what I do have is a area that's really affordable to live, but chiropractors don't qualify for the 10-year student loan forgiveness. So like our area is very socioeconomically poor. So if somebody came and we did qualify, their loans will get forgiven in 10 years, not 20 or 25. Like, okay, so who do we know for real? Who do we need to like, who's maybe not super busy, but has enough power that they can just start like scooting this through? Because now that I think about it, the reason I didn't bring it up in Barron's interview is because like he's busy working on other things, not necessarily more important. I would say probably more important, keeping our licenses and keeping us out of jail. But so if you know that person, or maybe you are that person, can we talk? Like, do you need a signature? Do you need me to like second something or I don't know. So that was my number one takeaway from the multi-passionate chiropreneur, the Walmart town. The other one is a term that I made up. So many of you have probably heard the term guacamole rich. Okay. If you haven't, allow me to educate you. Guacamole rich is this point in your life where your debt to income ratio is just right that you don't care how much it costs to add guacamole. Okay. You stop looking at the price. I don't know. Is guacamole an extra $2 at Chipotle or 4? Honestly, they could charge me 7 and be like, well, I'm guacamole rich, bitch. So there you go. There's a term, but there's a different level of rich that I'm not going to go into the long story about how this was actually a very educational moment on our strategy calls. And I swear you'll just have to trust me that the group is really loving it and they're getting so much more out of it than just like, are you the Walmart town? Like we solve shit in these calls. But the next level after guacamole rich is Costco rich. You know what Costco rich is? Let me tell you. Costco rich is where you go to Costco and drop more than your month's mortgage payment in a single cartload of groceries. And you don't go into your car and cry. You just go, shit. How did that add up so much? Oops. And then you're back at Costco like 2 or 3 weeks later. Mm-hmm. That's Costco rich people. And that is something that you can aspire to if you so please. And those that are wondering, yeah, I did get my eye exam. Thank you for looking out for me. I appreciate that. And yep, I got glasses coming, my astigmatism. All right, let's learn about Bharon. Okay, so Bharon Hoag, he's not a fan of intros. He's not a chiropractor. He is a dynamic speaker. Like honestly, a dynamic person. So he was just speaking at Parker. I saw him speak at UAC. He's one of those people that if you meet him in real life, like I feel like he would give you a bear hug and just like want to learn everything about you. Just one of those like extroverted people who is so cool. Just really, really cool. He has been in the industry for 27 years. He's going to share that. We do talk a little bit about politics in the beginning, which kind of this episode and last episode, I almost felt like, oh no, the first half hour of the call wasn't really the whole point of why I had him on. But then by the end, it was like, I'm really glad we talked about that because that set us up to have more background on that. So just listen. Like I said, the profession's biggest groupie. He has a daughter who's a chiropractor, and his son is currently at Life and will graduate in 2028. And he said his life's mission is to make chiropractic the number one healthcare choice in the world. And thank God for people like him because y'all know we are too busy adjusting patients to like fight a lot of these fights. So thank God for people like him. So let's take a breath and relax. Dear God, thank you so much for these people that you have planted just fire and brimstone. Is that the phrase? Fire and brimstone? What is brimstone? Is that like part of a castle? That's got to be like an ancient castle type. Because that's the phrase, right? Fire and brimstone. Anyways, thanks for the spit and vinegar that you put in some people. Yeah, that are like here with just this big ass passion to change the world. God, we know that there are people that are in a place of power and pursuit of money, power, and change for the world in a way that maybe we don't agree with. And there are many of them. There are many of them in this world, and chiropractic just doesn't have enough. And all these other health professions, naturopaths, like midwives, people who are like leading the front on a day to day basis with our patients and helping people kind of wake up to like, hey, this is not, you can't keep blindly following this. Like, this isn't working out. This is not working out for our country, for yourself individually. And so, thank you for the people who are a part of protecting this minority group of healthcare. It goes beyond chiropractic. We're not the only green grassroots career that is trying to make a change who wants to be silenced. well, we don't want to be silenced. People want us to be silenced. Um, so just thank you for people like Bharon and people out there protecting all of the minority people who are speaking up and just continuing to be brave. Lord, I am like tiptoeing myself into the waters of bravery. I'm just going to stick in my little corner of wanting to be liked and just keep interviewing. Maybe that's my role. Maybe that's what you want from me. You just want me to be liked by everyone. No, actually, God to Lauren, I think we know not that is not your mission for me. But anyways, back to my case in point. Please protect them and just keep giving them passion to do what they do because it cannot be easy. It cannot be easy, but so many of the best things worth fighting for are absolutely not. In your name we pray. Amen. Kairos, there is going to be a link below, and it is how you can donate $33 a month to this cause. I will still love you if you don't. I promise. Me in my house, I know that it is worth a $33 bet every month that one day there's a good chance I am going to need to call someone who is going to come to my fight. Knock on wood. I hope it never happens, but I will spend, $370 a year for the rest of my life to know that's part of the reason I'm a part of my state association too. Is like, I mean, yeah, sure. I believe, yeah, like I'm glad they're doing things, but like anytime that I'm like, oh boy, am I going to get a complaint filed against me? Is this or that? When you are a member of these things, it automatically gets you the clout to get your emails called back. And like these people are great people. They're going to help you no matter what. But me and my house, I'd place that $33 bet that I'm going to need someone to answer my damn phone call one day and be like, hey, Lauryn, yes, how can I help you? So click the link, please donate. It would be amazing. If we could get 100 of you to donate, that would just be fantastic. So if you do, please tag me on social, like screenshot something or confirmation page. I mean, make sure you don't screenshot your credit card information or anything like that. And tag She Slays podcast so I can share and just get more of it out, more of this message out there because we need it. All right. Without further ado, here is my conversation with not chiropractor Bharon Hoag. Okay. So, Bharon, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for saying yes without having any fucking idea what you were getting into.
Well, yeah, that works for me 80% of the time. 20% of the time, I wish that I had different habits, but no, it's an honor to be here. I appreciate it.
Have you said yes to like a speaking opportunity or podcast episode or like podcast that was just like immediately you were like, why did I say yes to this?
I haven't with a podcast, but I have with speaking. I've showed up to places and been like, "Well, this isn't going to be." As a matter of fact, just this weekend.
I was gonna
Um,
say, spill the tea, Baron.
oh yeah, just this weekend, man. And so for anyone that's followed my career or knows anything about me, people say I'm a bull in a china shop. I don't really
I've
have a
literally
lot.
been described that exact way.
Yeah. So yeah, we're kindred spirits for sure. And so when I have a truth or when I'm passionate about something, I don't have time for the usual pleasantries of where we just humor people's
Yeah.
personalities, right? Like one of my things that drives me the most nuts. Oh, that's just Jim. And
Mhm.
I'm like, well, Jim's got a problem. And you guys keep enabling him by saying that's Jim. Can we just fix Jim or remove Jim from the equation? Because now Jim's whatever personality trait is limiting my ability to have impact. And that drives me nuts. So, I'm very much a very opinionated person, but I will say I get away with it because I'm also very willing to apologize if I'm wrong.
Mhm.
I am always willing to listen and consider my viewpoint, but I'm going to say my viewpoint, then you can challenge it. And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first person to say, hey, I was wrong. I'm going to correct that. I'll put something out immediately to say, you know what? I have new information. Here's where I'm at. So it's worked well for me. But literally just this weekend, I knew what event I was going to, but it was a philosophy event, and I saw the people that were on the list as well, and I was kind of like, well, there's a chance there's going to be a rub here because I know the way they communicate. I know what they're going to say. But you know what, Lord, you had me there. I'm going because that's where I'm supposed to be.
Mhm.
So I'm standing there, and there was a speaker right in front of me, and he spoke for an hour. Then I'm supposed to speak for 2 hours. As he's speaking,
Oh, 2
I'm
hours.
like, "Oh, this is gonna be bad." like, this is gonna be everything he said, I am going to condemn. And it's like already in my presentation. Like he's literally giving me
It's too
exactly the
late. It's too
example.
late.
Yeah. And he happened to be the president of a chiropractic school.
Yeah, that's
So it was just this. I literally got up when it was my time to talk. And of course, he sat front row right in front of me. And I just told him, I said, listen, I, I'm going with this because I do where God leads me. But I'm telling you right now, buckle up, guys, because I'm going to challenge you in a new way than you've ever been challenged. And I looked right at him and I said, please do not take this as a direct attack on you. God's obviously got something in the works here, so we're going to run with it. And so I did my presentation and I basically just explained why everything that he had just said is the wrong way to look at things. And we have to change in chiropractic the way that we approach problems. And because what we're doing isn't working, we've been stagnant for 25 years. We keep saying, we pat ourselves on the back when we get in these small groups and we're saying, yeah, we're great. Really more on the philosophy side of things. Our subluxation guys, I know I agree with them. That's my heart, but we're not growing our tribe. We're just getting tighter in our group, and the rest of the profession is starting to leave, which tells us we're not doing it right. We've got to be willing to change the way we approach this topic about what chiropractic is so that we can organize and come together and actually do some work rather than keep alienating and segmenting, which really happens more from the vitalistic side than it does the mechanistic side. We're the ones that push everybody away because they're not like us. And so that was
I
the
mean,
point
yeah,
of
I
my
have
talk.
heard so like my journey is I'm a Northwestern grad.
Yep.
And so honestly, when you said that it was a president of the school, I instantly went to more of a rehab, like, oh,
Yeah.
like,
No,
um,
other way.
yeah. So I was like, oh, okay. And I chose that school based off geography. I honestly had no idea that
Most
any
students do. Yep.
schools that picking a chiropractic school mattered. Like,
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
would that matter?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize until 4 or 5 years into practice, like, what was missing from my education and what was missing from my career. And so one of the things I've really noticed with the podcast setting is being able to talk to people about this divide, and it's so interesting because, like, I wanna be liked. Like, I have a
Sure.
personality that, like, I'm a chameleon, I'm working with my therapist on it, but, like, I just want everyone to like me. And so when people come out and say like, maybe you should have been a physical therapist and not a
Yeah.
chiropractor. Like
Yeah.
my I just like clench up into
You
such
get
a
a
tiny
visceral
ball of like,
response. Yes. Yeah.
oh shit. Oh my god, I can't believe you just said that. Like
Yeah.
on kind
100%.
on like kind of I understand. Like so like
Yeah.
I can step back or take the bird's eye view and go like, wow, we have like really, really different definitions, or I
Yeah.
don't know if definition,
Just
practices.
approach. The way you express it is different.
Yeah. Like you can look at one clinic that literally their goal is 2 visits,
Mhm.
get you out of pain. They'll say things like, my job is to put myself out of practice so you don't need me.
Yep.
Um, you know, and like call me when something new comes. And if you don't need me for 3 years, great. And
Yep.
I'm just like, "What?" And then, like, I'm over here trying to figure out how do I get it affordable for a family of 6 to be
Mhm.
checked every single week, and, like and that's just as the consumer,
Yeah.
a consumer of a product, like, I don't know if there's any other healthcare model that is that diverse.
Yeah. No, there really isn't. And when I speak a lot, because just to be clear for those listening, I'm not a chiropractor. So
Hey, I'll cover that in your
oh,
bio or
okay. All right.
something. Are you a lawyer? That's what you are?
No,
No.
I
Oh,
am a
shit, what
street
are you?
guy.
A street guy. I actually just
I'm
found this guy in an alley, and
I'm a
I was
groupie.
like
That's 100% accurate. It really is. I took a job back in 1995 and knew nothing about chiropractic, didn't even know it exists, but I had the gift of gab in the town that I was in, and he wanted me to bring in new patients. And I was like, tell me what this is, and I'll bring in new patients. And so I was just a con artist, really, that was just doing a job. I had a young child. I was getting ready to get married. I was just at a place in life that I didn't care. I just needed a job. And but as I started learning more about this thing, chiropractic, I got more and more irritated that I didn't know it existed. Like, I played football in high school. I had a scholarship to play in college. I blew my knee out, couldn't play. So all of a sudden I'm starting to like, wait a minute, what if I would have been getting adjusted in high school? Would I have prevented my knee injury? Could I still be playing football? All this stuff's going through my mind. I had a young daughter, and as I'm learning with pediatrics, I'm like, oh my gosh, she needs to get adjusted right now. And why didn't we know this? Why wasn't my wife getting adjusted? All these things were going through my head because I'm just an all-in kind of guy. When I believe in something, I just am fully committed. So then I just got very, very passionate about telling the world about chiropractic because no one told me. And I didn't want to miss an opportunity to ever not share this with someone that needed it, because I felt like someone missed that opportunity with me and I
Mhm.
needed it, but no one told me. And so that just started my career. And I've done everything you can do in chiropractic other than legally adjust. So I've just seen it all. But this profession, what makes it so amazing is the very thing that's cursed it, which is the diversity of the people that it calls. And I
Mm.
do believe you're called to chiropractic.
Yeah,
I think right now
'cause
people
you're
are
not
choosing
called
it.
for the money.
No, definitely not.
Not coming for the prestige,
No,
the guaranteed income.
no. I mean, there's money to be made without a
Oh,
shadow
yes,
of a
yes,
doubt,
yes, yes, but it's not
but
guaranteed.
it is definitely not show up, punch a card, and go home and make millions. That's not what it is. You
No.
have got to love it. But the diversity in it, and this is where I differ from my like-minded people. So I own a clinic in Columbus, Ohio, and we are very similar to yours. We are a subscription-based, everyone gets adjusted once a week. We're cradle to grave. And but we tell them the whole reason they're getting adjusted is because we need to make sure their body can better adapt to the stress that they experience, the physical, emotional, and chemical stresses, the brain and the body's connection, and its ability to self-heal, self-regulate is very vital. But that has to happen around once every 7 days so that we can break bad patterns in the brain. And so, but we're all cash. All we do is adjust. I'm very philosophical when it comes to what chiropractic is. But I also believe there are 1.5 million different types of people in the world. So I'm okay with there being 1.5 million different types of chiros. I want chiropractors that only want to see PI cases because I don't want to see them, but those people still need to be adjusted. I want people that want to just see workers' comp because I don't want to see them. And so I want them to see them and do it right so I can refer it. Right. So I'm good with people practicing the way they want to practice when it's very different from me, because we have a population that really is going to demand the differences. We're never going to get every breathing human being to believe the way I believe. No one's been able to do that in the history of the world. So for us to think that we have to develop a profession that has one unique uniting principle is fallacy. It's just never going to happen. But where I do draw the line, and we say this very much in our organization, chiropractic is about adjusting and having the premise that the body is a self-healing, self-regulating organism. And so if you start like removing adjusting from the equation, in my mind, it doesn't mean you're not a chiropractor. It just means I'm not going to expand, I'm not going to fight to expand the scope to include drugs and surgery. There are professions that do that already. Our profession doesn't need to do that. I would never do that. If you want to do nutrition, if you want to do laser, those things are great. Just don't call them chiropractic, because that's not you can be a chiropractor that does those things.
Right.
But chiropractic is adjusting, right? That's where the magic is. That's where we really connect with the body. And so I love everybody in the profession, even though they practice differently than we do in our clinic. And I'm okay with it because I want to refer the people that don't like what we're saying to them, so they're still at least getting something, and it's a more natural form of healthcare. So that's the diversity that I think we should be celebrating in chiropractic rather than attacking,
Mhm.
and finding the commonalities that we do have. Like, we all agree, everybody agrees on all sides of the aisle, that chiropractic should be the first line of defense whenever there's a health crisis, minus, bones sticking out of skin. But we're talking about, the average chronic healthcare crisis that our world has. Absolutely, it should start in a chiropractor's office, because we have the knowledge, we have the skill, and we're going to look at a much bigger option of treatment rather than immediately going to drugs and surgery. And so we all agree with that. So why can't we all come together just on that thought process that we should be the gatekeeper, right? And we should be able to work together to get that accomplished. And that's what we're trying to do within One Chiropractic. We're trying to find those commonalities, bringing people together, organizing them for specific purposes to be able to grow the expression and the utilization and the access to chiropractic around the world.
Mhm. I promise, the next question will well, I can't promise anything. I
No, that's
promise
fine.
we're gonna talk
You just
about
do
One
your thing,
Chiropractic
girl.
and how it what do you feel specifically the vitalistic chiropractors Like, what kind of shifts need to happen in the messaging? Because you said, like, you're alienating more or, like, I'm not gonna say we, because like, I don't know. I don't know
Yeah,
where
yeah,
I
yeah,
am in
yeah.
life. I'm still just like, I'm likable, like me. Um, but, like, where does that messaging could you see, like, shifts of still holding on to those subluxation-based
Yeah,
values,
yeah.
but not being so alienating?
I really think it's easier than people think because I don't think anything needs to change other than your judgment of people that don't think like you think. That's all that needs to change. If we're just more receptive, right? If we just celebrate the fact that someone else has a different view than I have. Where the rub comes from is when I start telling you you need to believe the way I believe or what you believe is wrong. This goes into politics, this goes into religion, this goes into marriages, this goes into parenting, right? If we're a little bit more, if we just have such security in where we're at, and we have a genuine desire to learn from other people that do things differently than we do, it creates an environment of collaboration. I mean, we were just talking about it with UAC, and that room is so different because everyone's there with a desire to collaborate, not to be like anyone, but to learn things they don't know and find opportunities to collaborate with people that are better at things than they are. That mindset, when there's no threat, and that's part of the problem. Even our more vitalistic chiropractors, our subluxation based, our philosophy based chiropractors, there's still a poverty mindset there. Like we still struggle with this idea that if we let anyone in, we're going to somehow lose everything we have. And that's false. You know, one of my best definitions of fear is that fear is not real. It's a figment of your imagination causing you to fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. That danger is real, but fear is a choice. And I love that because it's true. We fear things that do not at present and may not ever exist. And so that insecurity is what drives the separation. Part of the reason I can get along with everybody is I'm not asking you to believe the way that I believe, but I do want to understand why you believe the way you do. Not in a challenging way, but I want to understand it. Why do you like blue M&Ms better than black? That's just weird to me. I don't care. I'm going to throw them all in my mouth. But why for you is it blue? And then I come to find
Mhm.
out that blue has some sentimental value to you when you were a child, and so you just have a predisposition to blue tasting better in your mind, even though at the end of the day they're the exact same flavor. Right.
Right.
But now I know something more about you that before I would have said, you're just a high maintenance piece of garbage, eat all the M&Ms. But now I understand why blue is there. It keeps you grounded. It keeps you remembering things and keeps you focused on your mission. So
Mhm.
when we can step back from the insecurities we have, because the only time we judge others, honestly, psychologically, is when we're trying to validate ourselves. Otherwise, we don't care because there are a lot of things we see and don't even give attention to, but then we'll pick something else out that we determine to make a comment or we have to make a judgment. All that's doing is in some way validating in me that I'm okay and they're wrong.
Right.
When you're not doing that, when you don't need that to be
You
identified
don't
or
need
to
to
be
be
valued,
validated.
yeah, then man, the desire to collaborate is there. So if we could get, and this is what I shared that room this past weekend, if we as a group of people that believe a specific way, let's just say vitalistic, that chiropractic is about the adjustment, it's about subluxation, it's about getting the world to understand they need to be adjusted regularly. If that group of people would just be more organized and louder, not louder in judgment, but louder in message, then we would capture the 80% of our profession that's in the middle that's just tired of both ends,
Right.
and they don't want to they just want a home and they don't know where to go, so they're just staying by themselves. And people don't realize this in chiropractic. We have in the United States, we have two national organizations. We have the ACA and the ICA. Obviously they're on the ends of the spectrum, right? One would say the ACA is mechanistic, the ICA is vitalistic. Together combined, they have right around 7,000 paying members combined. There are 82,000 licensed chiropractors in the US.
Mm. So most people are like, "F both of you."
They're checked out. They don't
Yeah.
have faith in either organization. They don't believe that either one of them are going to do anything for them. And then let's take it to a state level. All 50 states have at least one association. Some states have two for the same
Mhm.
reason
We
we
have
have two
2.
nationals.
We have
Yeah,
2,
Wisconsin has two.
same
Yep.
difference.
Right? But then you look at those combined. Let's combine both the associations in Wisconsin. Still only represents 40,000 or 40% of the chiros in the state of Wisconsin. So you have 60% of the chiropractors in the state that are like, I don't want a part of anybody. I'm going to do my own thing. So that tells you right away there's no trust. There is zero trust or belief that these organizations are going to do anything for me. And so when you scale that to a profession that's, I mean, there are more than 80,000 MDs in Columbus, Ohio, and we only have 80,000 across the entire United States. We're very small as numerically of a profession. We don't have the reason that we're plateaued, the reason that we can't get anything done is because we're segmented. There's no way that your national or state associations can accomplish anything that you want individually because they don't have the resources or the time, and they're not willing to make a stand and boldly stand on any principle because it's going to polarize the small percentage of members they have anyway. So they just stay neutral, which pisses everybody off. I wish my association would fight for me, and they can't. I mean, they literally institutionally cannot do it. So this is why our profession has been stagnant. So if we could just get our group of people to say, you're not a competitor, you're a colleague. You're not a competitor, you're a colleague. You're not a competitor, you're a colleague. And then imagine just in your town, and you said it's a small town. Well, let's just say three of the smaller towns around you feeding into whatever big city that feeds your guys' towns. If the like-minded chiropractors in those groups all came together and say, hey, we're all going to put in $100 a month, and we're going to start doing commercials in movie theaters around here because we know in Wisconsin, a lot of people go to movies, and we're just going to do together just a general chiropractic that you need to be adjusted regularly, just a commercial. None of them, we're not sending them to a website. We're not doing anything. We're just going to message chiropractic. It's going to cost you next to nothing as an individual. But as a group, you could own most of the real estate in the movie theaters around that area, telling people to consider chiropractic. Do you know how easy that would be done? If that's the mindset. So if we could just organize and we could be louder with our message, we would capture more of the profession, and we'd be able to have Super Bowl commercials. We'd be able to have all of these things. And a bunch of us are just doing a little bit to get it done. But it isn't until that mindset changes that the only way I get what I want is by making those around me better. And that's something chiropractic doesn't have. You're instilled literally from, my daughter just graduated from Sherman a year ago, and I love Sherman. This is not a knock on them, but I had to unbrainwash her from what she was taught in clinic, because she was taught a lot of bad habits that continue to create segmentation that cause her to fear the adjustment rather than embrace it. And so it's systemic within chiropractic, kind of like the Hatfield and McCoy. We hate them because we've always hated them. And
Right.
that's just, there's no reason. We just hate them because we've always hated them. My grandpa hated them, so I hate them. And that's got to stop. And so that's the thing. If I could get our group to understand, we have the answers. I believe wholeheartedly the way that we practice, the way that you practice, is the best way to practice for everybody. It's the most lucrative financially. It is the most rewarding emotionally. It's the most beneficial as far as outcomes and the impact you have in your community. And there's less tension and strife because you're not dealing with insurance companies and dealing with all these external factors you can't control. For those four reasons, I believe the way you and I practice is the right way to practice. But that's right for me. There are some people that love that fight. So I don't care. But if we are more willing to share our stories in a non-arrogant, non-condemning way, we will start magnetizing people over to be like, why are they always so happy? Why do they have time to be able to go to UAC events 3 times a year? How do they do that? How do they keep their clinic going? I can barely do that. I can't take vacations because my clinic drops every time I leave. Like, they don't know a different reality because they're so cut off and segmented. If we're more organized and louder, we will win this because I do believe we have the truth. But if we keep pointing our finger and saying, you're wrong, I'm right, all we're going to keep doing is putting up walls. So
Are
there's a
there
very
any
long answer to your simple
schools?
question.
No, that's okay. Are there any schools right now that, in 2024, in your opinion, that you've seen that are really nailing that collaborative feeling? So, okay, so like one of the things you use the word collaborate
Yeah.
a bit, which I love. And I look at just my alma mater. And as I was graduating in 2010, they were more focused on collaborating with the U of M
And
med
the
school.
hospitals. Yep. Yep.
And so, like, which, they brought on vaccines, like flu shots
Yeah.
on campus, like right as
Yeah.
I was graduating. And even as a non philosophical doc, I was like, that seems
Yeah.
weird. That's
Yeah.
weird.
That seems very contradictory, but whatever. Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
So like from my like very green, I stay in my corner.
Yeah.
and just spill the tea with guests. But like I see vitalistic, we'll say the vitalistic chiros don't want to collaborate with the physical therapists over there. And then the air quotes physical therapists over there are really going, I want to collaborate slash suck up
Yeah.
to
Outside the
this
profession. Yep.
model.
Yep.
And you over there, you vitalistic chiropractors are embarrassing me
100%.
because, and so like, are
Yeah.
there schools that, in your opinion, are not so seg, what's the word I'm like, segmented or like just really nailing this in between?
Yeah. So when my kids, so my son's at Life right now, and my daughter just graduated Sherman. I told my kids where they weren't going to school, but they got to choose where they were.
Okay. You don't have to
I
say
s-
where you said they weren't.
that's fine. Well, I'll say it. They know they
Oh,
don't like me any more than I like them. But
who is it then? Okay, then fine, say it.
yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of national, not a fan of Western states. Palmer drives me crazy because I think Palmer's missing such an unbelievable opportunity to capture the market share because of their history.
Yeah.
But I can't get them to take a stance on a belief system. They're Switzerland. They've removed a lot of
But you don't
philosophy.
think that's the, so not taking a stance isn't being the, like, helping people come together?
So they're helping people come together doesn't mean you don't have an opinion. Helping people come together means that we celebrate those very differences that we
Got it.
have.
Yeah,
Right? When you don't ha
big difference.
when you don't stand for something, you stand for nothing. Like, I mean, you can't be Switzerland. Like,
Yeah, Switzerland didn't solve the war.
no, and maybe they didn't have soldiers die, but they are not making any impact in the world. Where the US or Russia or China is, whether you like it or not, they're doing things that
Mhm.
what they believe, what they stand for. So it's much easier to find the things that we could work on together, right? When we clearly know, we know what Russia stands for. When Trump was president, we knew what the US stood for, right? I mean, he was very clear. So you just know what you're dealing with. When you have someone that's just kind of, well, I love everybody and they're good and, well, we'll do this. It's just hard to know how to collaborate with that because you don't really know what they believe, and so you
Right.
can't get into bed with them. So all I'm going to break it down to answer your question, the only school that I can honestly say I believe is killing it is New Zealand. The New
Hmm.
Zealand Chiropractic School. They are just, but it's because they've broken away from the Hatfield McCoy vitalism versus mechanism, and it's because of what Dr. Heidi Havik is doing with all of her research. Their stuff is brain, there, which I am 100% in agree with. I think our side of the room needs to really understand. I believe in subluxations. I understand that, but what caused the subluxation? It's your brain. The brain is really why we experience the miracles that we see in our practices, because when we remove interferences, when we recreate and stimulate the brain, create better neuroplasticity, and the body then really can self heal, self regulate. And that's where the miracles come from. We don't fix anything, that, and I know that. We help the body be at its best so it can do what it was designed to do. So all the credit goes to God for His amazing design in the body. We just got to get the hell out of the way, meaning get rid of the drugs, get rid of the surgeries, the scar tissues, the bad habits, the mental stress, the eating shit. All that stuff is what stops the body from operating the way it was designed to operate. What makes chiropractic so amazing is our adjustments. Really, no matter what adjustments, whatever technique you use, that's the beauty of this, is as long as you're adjusting, as long as you're using or adjusting the spine, really doing upper cervical to any degree, that's the beauty of creating that stimulation to the brain that really creates the magic in the body. Dr. Heidi Havik just released a new study that is just incredible, that proves the specificity of the chiropractic adjustment. This is why DOs don't have the results. This is why those PTs that do mobilization,
Mobilizations, yeah.
they don't have the results, is because of this. This study proved that if you adjust an unstable subluxated segment of the spine, there is a direct correlation to the impact to the prefrontal cortex, which we know when you stimulate the prefrontal cortex, that is the operating system of the brain. It allows every other part of the brain to actually work better. So when you stimulate that area, it wakes it up, says, hey, let's take new information in. And then based on that information, we're going to do a motor output, which is what is, creating the dopamines, we're, causing your muscles to spasm, whatever the case may be. When you adjust a stable where it's not subluxated, there is no stimulation of the prefrontal cortex. You may get a pop. You may create some movement. The patient may say, oh, that felt good. But because that segment wasn't unstable. It wasn't subluxated. There was really no neurological engagement there. You're not stimulating the prefrontal cortex. So these doctors that, the rack 'em and crack 'em guys, where you're adjusting every toes, fingers, ears, nose, I'm not saying it's bad, but that's not where the miracles come from. The
Right.
miracles come from when we're hitting those areas that the body knows are unstable. So the brain's already sending information to that area, oftentimes giving you the kyphotic curves, giving you forward head posture. That's a neurological response. And so when we're hitting those areas, we're stimulating that. So New Zealand has taken away the mechanistic vitalistic, and they said, here's what the research is showing, because we're doing it and we're leading the world on it. And they're teaching their chiropractors to go out and speak that way. So therefore, they're not already engaged in this vitalistic mechanistic battle, like pick a
Mhm.
side. They're just going out and speaking this new truth
Right.
that is out there. So, and there's zero. They're in a country that doesn't have a lot of that hate. New Zealand's been a
Ironically, right
very,
next to
yeah,
another country that's, well, got some
yeah,
issues.
yeah. Australia is a whole nother animal. Yeah. But yeah, so I would say they're doing good. But I support Life West, and Sherman. Those are the three schools that I give money to. Those were schools that I made sure my kids visited so that they could decide where they did want to go to school. There are great chiropractors that come out of every school, even national, Western states, Northwestern, NYCC. I may not like their focus, and Parker, like Parker's a good school, but Parker's made the decision that their vision for the future is integration with medicine, and I think that's necessary. We do need to live in a world where there are chiropractors in hospitals that work very well with other specialties. My problem is, historically, whenever we've tried to work with other specialties, we've compromised our belief
Right.
system in order to get into the door. And I have a problem with that. So I'm all for a school and Northwestern's the same way. They really want to get in and do
Mhm.
these reciprocals, or whatever they're called, where they're sending their students to do rotations and clinical rotations in hospitals. I want to live in a world where we have a chiro on every maternity ward, that every child that's born is evaluated by a chiropractor. I want that world, and that's not going to happen until we integrate, right?
Right.
Until that world understands us. But I don't want to compromise it. I don't want you putting a chiropractor in there that doesn't know how to adjust, and then them saying, "Oh, nope,
Well,
everything looks
and
great."
yeah, like the last time we integrated, like insurance, and look where insurance took
Exactly.
chiropractic. And it's like,
100%.
okay, like we're not gonna be in the maternity wards. I mean, we could
Yeah.
be, but like
Yeah.
it's gonna be, we have to wait for a referral from their
Yep.
primary to say try an adjustment or two. Like,
Yep.
but okay, so talk to me about you. First of all, you know the most more about chiropractic for a non-chiropractor than
I can hang in any
it's
conversation.
quite
Yes.
impressive. So, talk to me about One Chiropractic and how it formed.
So again, my journey, I started off as just a CA in a clinic. Got the gift of gab. I ended up opening clinics with my boss at the time, and we were partners in clinics. I ran 9 clinics at the time. I was 21 ish, 21, 22, and just full of piss and vinegar. I mean, I just was on a mission. Like it was like I found this whole new world, and I wanted to share it with everybody in the world. And and I hate not knowing things. I'm really not that intelligent. I don't even have a bachelor's degree. I didn't even finish school because I had a child very young. And so I just had to start working. And so but I don't like not knowing things. I hate being the dumbest person in a conversation. It's a thing for me. My dad taught me that early on. As a con artist, you always have to be more intelligent than the people around you. And so, as I got into this thing called chiropractic, I wanted to own it. So I really started. I sent myself to technique seminars. I sent myself to all these philosophy events, and no one could answer my question of why does the adjustment work. They were all teaching me these systems of how to communicate it and sell it, but no one was really giving me the clinical rationale for a street guy to understand why does doing what looks like you're going to kill them, to an average person on the street doing a rotary cervical. I mean, I only saw that on TV, and that was not to restore
That's,
life.
yeah,
You
that was
know,
Van Damme movies, Born
Exactly.
Identity.
Jean-Claude Van Damme, right? And so, but no one could answer it, and that's so I kept digging. I'll never forget my very first person that could at least give me a little bit of the neurology behind it was Dan Murphy. And that guy, he's got a photographic memory. So he reads a study and it's just there. So listening to him and leaving that room, I felt like I got ran over by a Mack truck, but it at least started explaining to me physiologically what happens with the adjustment. So I was like, okay, I can grab that. Then I met Richard Barwell, that really connected the dots to the brain. And then I became great friends with Dr. Heidi Havik, and she just sealed it all for me about why the adjustment works. So as I grew in this thing called chiropractic, I started speaking very well about it, very intelligently about it. People were blown away. I wasn't a chiropractor, but could have these conversations. So I sold my clinics, had a fallout with my partner, and then I started doing consulting. And so I was teaching doctors how to fall back in love with chiropractic. This was right as managed care was really starting to suck the life out of chiropractic in the late 90s. And I was this very energetic guy that was falling in love with it, blowing my clinics out of the water, doing exactly what DD, BJ, Stevenson, all those guys did in the beginning, which was unapologetically scream it from the rooftops, and people would be drawn to it. And so I was teaching that process to doctors and doing very well. Then I had some issues in my marriage. I was addicted to my work. She was 100% right to basically give me an ultimatum. And so I ended up selling my consulting company, and I took a position as the executive director at the Ohio State Chiropractic Association. So I was pretty well known in the profession at this time because I was traveling everywhere speaking. I was this anomaly. There was no other non-chiro that was doing what I was doing at the time. And I was speaking for every state association. So I had a pretty good reputation. I was from Ohio. They were having issues. So I took over the association, learned a lot about the underbelly of our profession doing that I did not know as a vendor or a consultant. We grew the association very well, not just me. I was the catalyst, but we had an amazing board, God's perfect storm of people. But we took the association from about 300 members to 1,400 members. And we grew the budget from right around 160 grand to like 1.4 million. So, I mean, we had massive growth in a very short period of time on the very same principles that I grew chiropractic clinics. All I wanted to do was tell the world about chiropractic. I wanted to get away from the typical fighting, the lobbying, all of that stuff. So we took our lobbying dollars and we put them into dollars building relationships with employers, building relationships with school systems. I spent more time out of my office than in it, going into communities, building the relationships that chiropractors had already with leaders in their community, and starting to create these models that would flood patients into chiropractors' offices. So the profession loved it because their clinics were getting busier. We were having massive impact in different ways. But then, and I really am answering your question, I just needed to give you the history there. So my fifth year with the association, we had grown it, we got powerful, we had the strongest lobbyists now, we had money to be able to do stuff. There was a faction within Cleveland, Ohio, that really wanted drugs in the profession. This was right when Wisconsin was looking at expanding to do drugs. New Mexico were successful at doing it. They were looking at expanding what kind of drugs they could do. So there was this movement all of a sudden in the profession of we're going to expand the scope. And so I had a group in Cleveland that really wanted to do it. And I said, no, there's no way in Hades that's happening with my fingerprints on it. No way. And so they hated it. And so they ran a bunch of people against the other people on the board and basically created a massive incestual fight. And I'm like, I'm not in it for this. And so I resigned. So to answer your question, One Chiropractic came about because I was so pissed off with the structure of chiropractic and how it appeared that we were allergic to success, that we are one of the only professions that circle the wagons and shoot inward. And I couldn't figure it out. Like we have the best product on the planet, literally. I don't think there's anything else that can touch the chiropractic adjustment if we can communicate it authentically. Every living, breathing organism needs it. Every animal needs it. Every human needs it. Like we literally have a product that everybody needs. That's a benefit to everyone, has no negative side effect. And we still somehow blow this up and we can't get it. And it's not because people are fighting against us. Trust me, I spend all my time fighting. I'm not fighting pharma. I'm not fighting medicine. I'm fighting chiropractors. Like the lie that we tell ourselves is that we've been targeted and repressed. There was a time in our history with the AMA where they did come after us. We won that in the Wilkes case. But since then, we haven't been fighting them. Their strategy is to keep us segmented, to keep us where we won't organize. Once we organize, we will have to face those. But right now, our only issues are ourselves. So I got really, really angry with what happened in Ohio because we were doing so good. And then it just blew up because of just egos. That I met with a group of guys and we said, and there was a quote from Buckminster Fuller that just changed my life. And it said, you cannot change an existing reality by fighting it. You need to create a new model that makes the old model obsolete. And so I got with these group of guys and we were like, we need to build an organization that isn't membership driven. So I don't owe the membership. We don't have to do elections. We don't have to have presidents every 2 years. And the organization changes direction based on who's sitting in the presidency. We need an organization that's a nonprofit, but it functions like a corporation that has a mission. And our whole goal is to achieve that mission. And so had a lot of meetings with a lot of people smarter than me. And we came up with One Chiropractic, where our mission is to make chiropractic the number one healthcare choice in the world. But to do it by picking at the issues in the profession that nobody's working on. I didn't want to create a member organization and fly a flag and say, if you believe the way I believe, come join me. I wanted to start attacking issues. So we started working to get chiropractors into the military. That's whether people know this or not. A chiropractor cannot join any branch of the military in the United States as a chiropractor. There's no place for it. They do not offer it. It's not in the medical corps, nor can active duty military get access to chiropractic right now. It's not covered by TRICARE. It's not on the bases except for a few situations. So we felt, man, what a great way if we can get appropriately integrated into the military, how that will feed into more care in society as these people separate from the military. They're used to getting that care, their families, and so on and so forth. So we hired a lobbyist and we started going at that. And then in 2021, we created the Defense Council, which is what we spend most of our time doing now.
Okay, so the Defense Council now. So
Yeah,
this is like a branch of One Chiropractic,
correct.
basically.
Correct.
And what is the goal of the Defense Council?
To defend the rights of practicing chiropractors.
Okay, so it's CDC, right?
Yep.
Chiropractic Defense Council.
Yep.
It's cheeky. I like it.
Yeah. Intentional.
Um, Probably a little hard to find on the internet unless you know
Yeah.
exactly what
Yeah.
website you're
Right.
going
Right.
to.
Right.
Um, okay, so I most of my audience is America. So let's start with some of the stuff that you're fighting against in the US.
Yeah. So this was an idea, and I got to give credit where credit is due. Dr. Stephen Franson from the Remarkable Practice, he had this. He had this idea for about 10 years, and he kept pitching it to people, but no one really. They thought it was a great idea, but no one really took it and ran with it. And he, if you know Stephen, the dude cannot add another thing to his plate. He is one of the busiest humans I've ever met. And
He's
but he
mostly
kept trying.
surfing, but okay.
Well, he does work in that time. Yes, I will give that to you. So I had joined an organization called UAC, and my very first meeting was at an event, and there was only about 20 people or 20 couples at the event. And I got a chance to really sit down and talk with Stephen. I'd known Stephen, he had known of me, but we'd never really had that chance to just sit and have an intelligent conversation. So he pitched this idea to me. And after he learned who really what I was doing and where I was at in life at the time, I had just lost my mentor that had died unexpectedly to COVID and a number of things. So I was kind of in this lost place. I wasn't sure where I was really going. And so the minute I got done, he had this big grin on his face. And I'm like, okay, that's normally not the response I get, but okay. So then he lays on me this vision he has of creating a special forces type defense system for the profession. And in this team, it would have attorneys, it would have researchers, it would have lobbyists, PR firm, content experts, and they would all be educated and prepared and understand chiropractic so that anywhere in the world that chiropractic was attacked, we could deploy this team and we could just absolutely kick the shit out of anyone that was coming at us because we've never been able to do that in history. We've always been reactionary in history. And we win because what we're doing is good, but it's very expensive, very time consuming. And there's oftentimes a lot of pain and suffering attached to the win. But if we were organized and we could really have people prepared and ready to go for this singular purpose, we think we could be more effective. And at that time, this was in February of 21, at that time, British Columbia had just taken away x-ray rights from chiropractors. Pediatric rights were just taken away from chiropractors in
Mhm.
Australia. Texas just finished a massive battle with the medical association where they were coming after the chiropractor's ability to use the term neurological. You know, we have these battles all the time that there's no real organization that's fighting these. It's
Right.
typically one or two
Kind of up to the
chiropractors.
state association maybe or to help out or yeah.
Well, they can't. This is what I was telling you before. They can't take those fights on because if they do, they're going to burn all their political chips and they're probably going to piss off half of their membership. And they
Mhm.
need their membership's permission to be able to spend the kind of money you have to spend to go after that.
Aren't malpractice companies like, isn't that supposed to be their,
No,
like, thing is to
no,
protect chiropractors'
no.
rights?
They are just supposed to protect you as an individual if someone's attacking you personally. That's it. So if there's a claim against you for your practice, that's where your malpractice comes in. But and I'm friends with NCMIC and Cairo Secure, and so I love them, but their business model is to pick their battles, right? They can't really fight everything because your premiums would go through the roof. The beauty of a
Right.
chiropractor is our premiums are so friggin' low because we don't have claims against us. If they were going to fight those kind of fights, your premiums would have to be way higher in order for them to be able to justify the expense, right? So
So there's nobody in our profession that was going like,
so what was
"This
happening?
attack on chiropractic
Yep.
is happening,
Yep.
not
So
at this chiropractor."
even if you think back to the AMA, that was Dr. Wilkes. Like it was an individual, and then he got a group of people to help him fund it. But there was not an
I
organization
never
that took that
realized
on.
that.
And the same
I
thing in British Columbia. Before we took over, there was 4 or 5 chiropractors that just said absolutely not. They were NUCA doctors or they were upper cervical guys and Gonstead guys that they need to be able to take their films. They need the listings in order to actually do their technique. And so they organized and they raised a bunch of money, but it's never been an organization. It's always individuals that try to rally the troops. And it's the 10% that always gives that continues to give to be able
Mhm.
to fight these things. But it's not a sustainable way to defend the profession. It just
Right.
really isn't, especially to gain ground, maybe to protect. But by the time they
And that's
raise
what
the
you're saying
money,
about being just reactionary.
correct, correct. And so Stephen had this vision, and I literally, as he shared with it, I was like, this is why I've had the journey I've had. I have
Mhm.
all the relationships. I have the piss and vinegar in me. I have all the knowledge. I have the organization already built. And so it was just an unbelievable thing. And then as God's timing is perfect, we decided he pitched it in February. We launched it in late July to the profession, and we did it as a virtual summit. We were
July
still kind
of
of,
21?
yes, July of 21. So we were still in the throes of just coming out of shutdowns. We were still very COVID masking, but vaccines hadn't been out yet, right? Or they were just coming out. But we did this virtual summit, and we brought people from all around the world. It was okay. We had about 1,500 people attended, and it was kind of our here's why the profession needs this kind of a
Right.
thing. And it went okay, but then literally 2 weeks later, California mandated vaccines for chiropractors to continue to practice. And so it was like, all right, here we go. And so we immediately hired a bunch of attorneys. So it was in California within 7 days. We had 7 states that had mandates for chiropractors to have to be vaccinated in order to continue to practice. So we hired, I think at the time we had 12 different attorneys around the US, one in every state. And then we had expert attorneys on things like freedom of speech and religious exemptions and things like that. And and within 2 weeks, we had prepared an exact step-by-step protocol for each of these individual states to protect the rights of these chiropractors. And we did. And not a single chiropractor was restricted from practicing. We won all that. Rhode Island ignored everything. So we ended up having to sue them because they were ignoring religious exemptions. And that one was a little hairy for a while, but every other state, we were successful at working with the state association, providing the resources, having legal advice, doing webinars, calming everybody down, and we were extremely successful. Our vision of having the team executing and moving and killing it right where it stood, it was a massive success. So we grew immediately from like 200 and some contributors to almost 3,000 contributors in 2 weeks because part of our thing is if you're connected to
Which
us
is still a really low number. Like,
in
you
the big
just
scheme of
fought for
things, yes.
7
Yes.
states
Yeah.
worth of
Yeah.
chiropractors to
Yeah.
not have to get vaccinated, but, like, okay,
Yeah.
alright, that's good growth,
I
but,
mean,
like
it gave us the resources we needed to do what we did. But I agree with you. It's still pretty astronomically insane to me why there hasn't been a bit more of an adoption of this concept in the profession. But so then word got out from the U.S. to their colleagues in Australia and New Zealand. And if you remember during the times, those two countries were the worst at repressive
Mm.
behavior from their governments. So there were chiropractors that were bleeding. Now, again, we were the only organization that stood up adamantly and said, hell no, choice matters. I don't care your belief system on vaccine, but you cannot make someone ingest something in order to be able to make a living for themselves. No way in hell that's going to happen. And there were people like the ICA that wrote position papers, but they weren't hiring attorneys, standing in front of
Right.
they did what they did, but no one was doing what we were doing, which was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars hiring attorneys, doing opinion letters, writing, on behalf of these doctors. So this is God's amazing design. I'd never been out of the US. I didn't even know where Australia was. I knew it was down under, but I had no idea where it was on the globe. Like, I'm completely clueless. And all of a sudden, I'm in the throes.
I think that was like a prerequisite to get into 3rd grade.
Hey,
It
well,
was like
hey,
7
there's no
continents.
proof. There's no proof. All right. I made it through. So leave me alone. But so long story short, we were the only group in Australia that was able to defend them. And so we defended over 800 chiropractors in Australia and kept them practicing. We did the same thing in New Zealand. We did the same thing in Canada. So we grew very quickly as an
You
organization.
had to have more fun because I know what you ask, like, it's $33 a month that you had to have way more than $33 from some people for some of
No, you
this.
have to understand, and this is what people don't understand about legal fights. We've generated to date, since 2021 when we launched in August of 2021 or July of 2021. We've generated right around $4 million in revenue. Yes, I did. We have an option if you want to be a founder, you can give a one-time 18.95 and then it's 33 a month after that. But that's pretty much just 33 a month. That's just the way we did it. And it was by design. I mean, there's everything we do is very intentional. But if you think about it, at my peak, I had 4,400 individuals giving me $33, right? So what's that math just real quick? So every month I'm generating like 120 grand. So 4,400 times 33. Yeah, $145,000 a month I'm generating. In the legal world, it's all about retainers. I don't have to pay for the entire case up front. I just have to have so much money sitting in a retainer that they pull from as they're doing the work. So we wanted a little bit from a lot of people because in the legal world, all I got to do is be able to keep up with retainers. So if I
Mhm.
renew my budget every single month, I can sustain these battles,
Got
right?
it.
I don't need, $1 million case
It's
doesn't
not
mean
like
I
a
have to.
research paper where you go in knowing, "Okay,
Correct.
we're gonna need $2 million to start
Yeah.
this research."
No,
Which
it's very
researchers worked
different.
a little more like lawyers
Yeah. Right.
than
Exactly.
research. We
So
can talk we'll talk to
it's
Heidi about that. Let's get her real drunk
Oh,
and
trust
then
me.
ask her if she'll
Heidi and
work.
I have talked over and over and over about how I feel they need to fund, and she's doing way better. I mean, they've generated more money for research in the last 4 years than we have in the entire history of our profession. And a big kudos to NCMIC and their research. They've been, and I know everyone's like, oh, NCMIC are the bad guys. They're really not. And they have done maybe in the past they picked a side, but they're not now. And the same thing to Cairo Secure, Stu Hoffman and his crew. He's given a lot of money. I mean, there's things that exist in our profession now that if we would organize around it, we wouldn't be asking for money all the time. And so, believe it or not, my goal right now is to get to 10,000 people giving me $33 a month, US. If I get to that goal, which is a stupid low number when you consider there's 125,000, 140,000 worldwide. I'm only asking for 10,000 of those people to consistently give $33 a month, which is less than one adjustment a month. That literally will give me all I need to be able to take on pharma, to be able to take on major med, to be able to take on insurance companies. We're already about to file a lawsuit against insurance companies here in the US. And I'm only at 2,200 contributors now. And so, because when COVID stopped, there was, the fire's not burning. A lot of people stopped giving. So we're kind of
Can
rebuilding
you
in a
imagine
non-crisis.
stopping, like, I'm not gonna give you $33 a month now.
Listen,
Like, I would think, like, once you get over that hurdle, they're like, "Ah, whatever.
yeah,
You're barely I get free Netflix from my sister-in-law, so I might as well give you."
right, exactly, right. Well, I don't judge. I'm thankful for what people give, but
It's all right,
yes, it
I'll
is.
judge.
Okay, you judge
You're
for
one
me.
of those people. You better click that link below and give back, you jerk.
So yeah, so literally that's 4 million a year because these battles take a while. All we've got to do to defend our profession is stop them from enforcing things. It could take 6 years to win it. All I want to do right now is stop it from happening. So, like in British Columbia, they passed this insane law. It's Bill 36 in BC. And why does this matter to the United States? Because if they're successful at implementing this shit there, you can
Mhm.
rest assured it's going to happen here. Like, we have to kill these things where they start.
Yep.
We can't wait for them to get to our door. They're too strong. So in BC, they passed this Bill 36. It has about 6 or 7 different components to it that are very scary. But one of them is if there's even an anonymous complaint is issued against you, you are guilty until proven innocent. You are suspended until they complete the investigation.
That can't happen in the
Right? I
US
mean,
though,
think about
right?
that. You want
Like,
to
sorry,
eradicate a
Canada,
profession.
you picked the wrong country. Like, what?
Yeah. So,
Assumed guilty,
yeah, yeah,
anonymous.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's just
And
crazy.
I
And that's
mean,
just one of the things that they're doing. Right. And
and like, not to get too down any rabbit hole, but like, you go like, okay, well, that would never happen in America. But like, there's a, yes, maybe legally it wouldn't happen, but like, look at just the cancel culture
oh, I
of
was
the
going to
last few
say,
years that is like, somebody anonymously claimed you did this and you are assumed guilty. Like, so it's
listen,
like,
after COVID, nobody can ever say that will never happen.
mhm,
Some of
yeah,
us lost family members, like dear, dear
mhm,
friends over our position to not be vaccinated. Like you can no longer say there's no way something's going to happen because we in our lifetime have experienced the no way they're going to shut down our entire economy and force us to stay home for months on it. Right? I mean, we
yeah.
forget about it. Right? We have to
You
survive,
really do. Yeah. You look back and you're just like,
but
holy shit, that happened.
yeah, that
Yeah.
happened. And so we are in a state now. So what we're doing in British Columbia, they passed the law. I couldn't stop that, but I can stop them from enforcing it. So our attorneys are 100% prepared right now. The minute they try to suspend someone's ability to practice while they do an investigation, we immediately will do an injunction. And we've already got all of the resources to be able to explain why that is illegal. Yes, you passed the law, but it doesn't mean it's illegal. It's legal to enforce it. And so that's the beauty of what we're trying to do by organizing. Like right now, we have 57 attorneys worldwide that we have on retainer, ready to go. They understand chiropractic, and the minute something goes down, we can jump on things. And my goal is to have around 200 attorneys worldwide. I mean, just think about this: that we have 200 like badass people around the world that know chiropractic. They're on our side. And the minute they try to take away our pediatric rights in Australia, here's something fun that we're doing in Australia. So we were successful in collaborating with the Australian Chiropractic Association and a couple other organizations. We collaborated together. We were successful at getting them to remove the 2 and under policy that they had against children seeing chiropractors. But we're not stopping there because I have a major problem that that policy went into effect at all because there's no evidence to support that there was any danger to children 2 and
Mhm.
under receiving a manual chiropractic adjustment. So we are now going to do a restriction of trade lawsuit against the Australian government stating you now need to prove to us what you used to create that policy because that policy inappropriately altered the decision of a parent to make healthcare choices for their child. And you restricted our trade on a bogus thought process, right? That's the work we want to do for the profession.
Yeah.
That if you're going to come after us, not only will we stop you, but we're going to make it hurt.
Yep.
You are not going to get to do these arbitrary things saying that chiropractic's not scientific or that it's not effective or that it's dangerous. You want to say that we cause strokes? I am going to blow you the hell up with evidence to prove that we don't. You want to really talk about unsafe healthcare? Let's really look at the
Mhm.
allopathic world. Let's look at the drugs that you're ingesting into all these ignorant people. Let's talk about opioids. Let's talk about the vaccine and how you guys falsify data. You really want to do this? Let's go. Right. And so we can do that when we organize our profession and we have the sustainability to keep these attorneys on retainers and dig into these battles. And so the vision, I haven't met a person yet that doesn't hear what we're doing and be like, that's fucking
I was gonna
awesome.
say, you have to get, like, standing ovations,
Yeah.
right?
When people hear it, yes, but it's so much fun for me because I love this profession so much. My daughter's a chiropractor. My son's going to be a licensed chiropractor in about 2.5 years. And so, like, this is family business for me. This is the future of my name, of my heritage is going to be in chiropractic. And so I want a world where they choose us first because they understand us and they know choosing chiropractic first really does create a world that functions better, that operates on a better plateau of humanity, on a better energy level where people are not making decisions out of pain, frustration, and fear, but they're making decisions out of clarity and out of purpose and out of passion. Because if we could take subsets of our patient base in our clinics, right? And the energy that's created, and I know it is in your clinic because of the type of clinic you have. If we could bottle that energy and that love and that passion and that piss and vinegar really that we create in people that are happy and healthy and we start expanding that worldwide and we get rid of the negative energy that's coming out of ERs or coming out of surgery centers or coming out of addiction clinics and we convert it what kind of world do we live in then, right?
Oh
I
my
really think
gosh.
we
We live
can.
in a subluxated world. So, I mean, you're literally talking
100%.
about the macro
Yeah.
system of healing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's attainable. And I think our 125,000 chiropractors around the world, if we organized, we could make that a reality. We could be the people that they're talking about in 50 years, the way we talk about the guys that went to jail in order for us to practice today. Right. We talk about Herbert Ross Reaver. We talk about, Dr. Cleveland, all these people that were thrown in jail for practicing chiropractic without a license before we had licensures. And we talk about them with great honor and respect. We have an opportunity in history to be that generation for 50 years down the road that took an opportunity of the corruption and the self-sabotage that medicine has done to itself, and the world is looking for answers. If we could organize and we could be louder and we could be, or our message is clearer, because we're not fighting over what technique is better. They all
Right.
work. Let's just say people need access. Find a chiropractor near you. Even someone that I don't think is a great chiropractor is still better than getting an injection.
Right.
Right. So we all know that. We all say yes to that, but we don't live it. Imagine if we had organizations like us and the Foundation for Chiropractic Progress and the Clinical Compass and all these groups that do really great work, and we started working together and we started pushing this stuff out. We defend anyone that comes under attack for doing what they're doing. The foundation starts pushing out more data in commercials and social media, and we saturate the world, right? That's a fun vision. That's a reality that can happen next year if we could organize, right? If we
Right.
could just, and what you're going to be giving as an individual is so much less. $100 a month. If you gave us $33, if you gave the Foundation of Chiropractic $33, if all these people did that, you'd be given less money a month than you probably give right now. And we would be able to do far more for the profession. The problem is we've got all these separate organizations that are duplicating efforts and resources.
Right.
And so the money's going nowhere because no one really has enough to do anything significant. And so that's the vision. That's what we're trying to create.
So, okay, this question may make you a little uncomfortable, but like,
Never, never bring it.
so we're gonna like spill the tea, get a little like gossip magazine
Yeah.
here. Like, this is unconfirmed, but like, what kind of rumors about policies or things against chiropractic have you? Because you have to have a pretty good finger on the pulse of like, Connecticut's talking about some crazy shit. Like, what
Yeah.
kind of like unofficial on the down low stuff is like floating around out there that could be presented to chiropractic in the next 1 to 5 years?
Yeah, so I don't know. I don't think we ever have to worry about vaccine mandates again. I think there's so much evidence. I was nervous about that the end of last year because we had found a number of things coming from the government. I thought they were going to reinstitute masking. They were going to reinstitute some shutdowns because they were going to be headed into this new era of control because we're coming into an election year. And so I was like, they're going to do everything they can to stop, the Trump machine from coming back alive. And the best way to do that is to shut down the world. So, but the evidence is coming out so hard. I don't think mankind's ever going to be duped like that again. So I don't think that's going to happen. What I think is happening is that this idea of keeping us segmented and feeling powerless through propaganda has amped up even more than ever. And so this cancel culture, this idea that we have to be okay with someone identifying themselves as a cat and we have to put litter boxes in our school system in order for our kids to feel safe, like there's a erosion of just strength that is happening to keep us dumb, to keep us uneducated, to keep us segmented. That's the game that's being played. So the danger to chiropractic in that is that if we stay segmented, then you're gonna start seeing even more. Like I was just at Parker, and I walked through the vendor hall, and 80% of the room of that vendor hall had nothing to do with chiropractic. It was everything else. It was massage chairs. It was, and I'm not knocking any of that stuff. I'm just saying that that's a perfect example of the shell game that's being played right now, where we're keeping our profession distracted rather than getting back to the roots of what allowed us to get to the point that we are what we are today. If you look at the history from 1895 to 1975, 1975 is when Louisiana was given was the last state to have a scope of practice for chiropractors. So it stopped all of the attack against chiropractors going to jail and all of that stuff. So for 90 years, we our 80 years, excuse me, we just told the story of chiropractic and how we were separate and distinct. And then we ended up getting every state licensures. We beat the AMA in a lawsuit. Medicare acknowledged us as physicians. Insurance companies started reimbursing us. All these things started happening in the 80s that created this amazing Mercedes 80s idea.
Mhm. I've
But
heard,
what
I've
happened
heard.
is we started getting lazy. Yeah, you've heard. Yeah, I've never experienced it, but I
Yeah, I
heard
was
it was
born in
great.
'86, so
Yeah, yeah. So, and so it created this false sense of security. And so we were very successful in the 80s, but then in the 90s, managed care hit and it cut the legs out from underneath us. And we've really been chasing our tail as a profession since then. But during the 80s, clinics were busting at the seams. We were adjusting everybody. I mean, it was just insane. And so what I'm seeing coming down the pike, they kind of shot their shot with this COVID thing and shutdowns and mandates and things like that. Whatever the ultimate reason for that was, that's a different rabbit trail for a different conversation. But in the chiropractic world, it's smothering chiropractic inside of other stuff. So one of the other things they're doing in British Columbia is they amalgamated all of their boards, which means there's no longer a PT board, a chiro board, an acupuncturist board. It's one board now managing all of those specialties. When you do that, you start over time, it starts generalizing all of those together to one thing.
right.
Right. So that's what I'm starting to see happen. So we're fighting against that. I'm seeing that same thing happening in Australia. There's one body that governs everything. And it's horrible. Like what happens is massive repression because they don't have the time to understand the uniqueness of each industry. So they just put general truths over all of them. And when you go outside of that general belief system, you're wrong. And that, it's very similar to the socialist, society that
Mhm.
this is what success looks like. Anything outside of that is wrong. Everyone's going to conform to this way. And so that's what I'm starting to see. I will see if if the liberals win, and I don't care if you're liberal or conservative, that's not the point. But if there isn't a change in DC in November, and it's more of what we have now, the attack against our profession isn't just our profession; it's against all natural forms of healthcare.
Mhm.
It's going to be higher. You're going to start seeing more attempted restrictions. You're going to start seeing legislation that's again trying to control what they think health is. The World Health Organization has already tried to do that by getting countries to sign on, giving the WHO the authority that if we ever have another pandemic, they can come into a nation and they control all
Oh,
outcomes for that
shit.
pandemic. Yeah. And seven nations have already signed on to that garbage. I am being told 100% the US will never, even if Biden was to sign it, it would have to go through Congress. Congress would never, I mean, you'd have states like Florida and Texas that just be flipping them off and saying
Yeah.
no, but that's the scary stuff that's happening out there. It's this idea that there needs to be the people that are smarter than everyone else
Mhm.
controlling this. And that's my biggest concern, which is why you don't build an army in wartime, you build an army during peacetime so that you're
Yep.
ready for war.
I love
So the
that.
reason we're trying to build so fast right now is we've got to be prepared because if something like that happens, we can stop it. At least stop it from affecting you individually and then collaborate with other healthcare specialties and other groups to be able to make, do a stand. Like we were able to stop the COVID vaccine requirement in British Columbia because we got with the dentist, we got with the acupuncturist, we got with the massage therapist, and we all together hired the best legal attorney we could. And it stopped the Ministry of Health from enforcing vaccine requirements. So when we do this and we're prepared and we're ready, we're able to stop these things. And because of the work we had done in Australia, the work we had done in the US, we were prepared for what was going on in Canada. And so that's why we're trying so hard. So I don't think there's some secret like we tapped in and we found out there's going to be this one big play against us. It's going to be more regulation. That's going to be the play. That's going to continue to say you outliers, you people that are wanting to see children like minutes after they're born. Nope, not going to happen because of
We're
this, and that. And
protecting the children.
correct. That's what
Got
I
it.
think
Yep,
is
that makes
coming.
sense. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So how can people find you and support this?
Yeah. So go to defendchiropractic.org. Defendchiropractic.org. Again, our ask is 33 US dollars a month. We love those people that are, if you're super passionate about this and you want to be a founding member, you get some swag and you get some perks with it. That's one time, 18.95, and then 33 a month after that. And if there are those people that really don't want their credit card hit every month, you can give a one time. Like if you just want to give us, 100 grand, I'm not going to stop you. But
They will say yes.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
fine.
exactly. But really the business model is getting 10,000 people giving us 33. And this is what people don't understand about why, because like, oh, why aren't you asking for more? I'd pay more. Or, why aren't you going after corporate dollars? Um, if as much as I would love 10 grand, in our world, 10 grand doesn't do much. And then I'm gonna have to go out next month and replace that 10 grand.
Mhm.
Right. So for me, the reoccurring payments mean everything because then I can depend on it. And
Yeah.
when as I'm
I mean,
getting
it's
it
why a
and we're
chiropractor discounts membership and subscription models is you
yeah,
can build a practice on that. I will
that
give
is
you a
correct.
discount because I can make financial decisions knowing that you
Correct.
continue to be a part of this. That should
100%
resonate
correct.
with people for sure.
Yeah.
So,
So that's our thing. The other thing you can do, which you have done, which thank you again so much for this opportunity. If there's places that I can talk, I've really got to, because when people hear this, they get excited. We're just having a hard time getting people away from their TikTok, getting them away from the other stuff that they're filling their minds with to hear it. So if anyone listening to this has a podcast or anyone you're an
this is how I
influencer to
got
some
you.
degree,
You
th-
said, like, anybody have a podcast? And I think I sent you, hey, I have a podcast. Can you
you
come on
did.
it? And he's like, I don't know who you are, but
That's
yes.
exactly right. I will talk to anybody about this because this matters to every audience in this space. Like it doesn't matter why whoever you are listening to this and you're part of the She Slays the Day, it doesn't matter what walk of life you're coming from. This matters to you. This is about your right to practice the way you want to practice. And so we will defend your rights. And that's what you're a part of. So when you become a contributor, I'll speak that into being and I'll speak positively. When you become a contributor, that does give you a layer of protection. If you're an ongoing contributor with us and your rights are violated, you have a regulatory body that came after you for marketing issues, or you have another chiropractor that's targeting you for something, and it wasn't a mistake you made. I'm not your malpractice insurer. You have that for those types of things. But if your rights are being violated, we will protect you. You can reach out to us and there's no extra charge. Our attorneys will represent you on those issues. We do that regularly. And then if you really have an issue, then we would want to take it on because we want to create precedent around that particular issue to help us to stop that from happening anywhere else in the country. So if you are an ongoing contributor with us and something does happen where your rights are being violated, we will protect you and it'll be no additional cost. So there is kind of that legal ease type
Yeah.
protection
Like,
that
why wouldn't you just to like know, like, if shit hits the fan, I know who I'm calling.
yeah, exactly. And we do want you, and that's the relationship I have with NCMIC and ChiroSecure is they know that I'm leveraging their risk, right? Because we will cover some things. We'll keep them plugged in and they know what's going on, but they don't have to spend their legal money on certain things because we want to fight it because we're willing to take it to the nth degree. So, for example, up in Ontario, Canada, there was a case like that with an individual doctor. I didn't really care so much about his particular case, but it was a perfect example of the regulatory board overreaching with their penalty. I mean, it was ridiculous what they were fining him like 40 grand and suspending him for 9 months because a patient was upset with a prepay.
Oh
Like,
my
that's
God.
excessive. Like, that's just unacceptable. They were trying to prove a point, but that's how you put a chiropractor out of business,
Yeah.
right? And so we defended that case because we wanted to hold the college accountable. They call their regulatory board colleges. We wanted to hold the college accountable that they cannot just do that, that there is a group out there watching, making sure that chiropractors are not being abused. If he did anything wrong, he should correct it. I'm okay with there being discipline, but shutting him down for 9 months
Right.
is unacceptable to me. And so we did. We spent a lot of money, but they spent even more. And we didn't even technically win that case. But what it did was show them they can't do this. And every disciplinary action after that one was appropriate.
Hmm.
So we did what we
Mhm.
wanted to do. We just
Yep.
said we're not going to let you get away with this. We're going to make you pay every time you do something that isn't appropriate. We're going to hold you to task and you're going to have to spend a lot of money to defend yourself, and they can't sustain that either. They can't have challenges to every one of their disciplinary actions. So
Right.
it causes them, we're holding them accountable to do the work they were intended to do, not get cavalier. And so that's why if you're a contributor and something like that was to happen and you have a regulatory board that's coming after you or a insurance company or something and they're violating your rights, then we'll protect you.
Aaron, you are such a delight, and I'm so happy you exist in the world because, like, we have just these warriors that are not chiropractors. Chiropractors just get so head down in our day
Yeah,
to day,
yeah.
practice, and like, it's just so good to know that people like you have got our back. Oh, I didn't even
Well,
mean that like really corny
no, yeah,
thing.
no
Well, I
pun
got
intended,
everyone
right?
else's back. You got mine. Can we put that on a T-shirt? Love
No,
it.
it really is my honor, and I do love this profession. I mean, again, God's plan is so perfect, and I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I'm doing the work that I was built and made to do. I'm reckless abandon in it, and I will continue to do it. I love the chaos of what I do, and I know not everyone does. But my ask of everybody is, but I can't do it without you. I can't do this. So, and let me just say one other thing, not to spur into another topic, but the 10,000 isn't also economic. It's also our ability to move people very quickly when we're in the middle of a battle. So part of our success in Australia and how we were able to win and eventually remove those mandates is I had 1,000 Australian chiropractors, and we had some other specialties that ended up uh, gravitating to us as well. On a minute's notice, I could say, okay, guys, I need you to put this into your COVID safe plan. I need all of you to put this sign on your front door. And I was able to direct and guide a large number of people immediately to move in a direction that we could put them in a defendable position. So the reason we won that battle is not that we went and we attacked the government. We just put all of these people in a position where the government couldn't enforce their rule. Like there were exemptions. So we exploited the exceptions. To every rule has an exception, every one of them. And so we took the time to figure out what that exception was. And then we instructed everybody on how to exploit that exception so that if they came in your office, you could, with a clear conscience, say, we're abiding by the rule. But we needed our attorneys to really dissect that. We needed the guidance, we needed the right wording, we needed to create the right paperwork and instruction. So the reason that 10,000 is such a big number is if we really have another COVID type experience, our ability to stop things is much faster when we have all those people moving at the same time in the same
Right.
direction.
It's
So,
that
like in Australia,
unified front. Yeah.
yeah. So in Australia right now, we're fighting against the free speech. They're very restrictive in what they can market in Australia. So our goal is to have thousands of chiropractors doing things that we know the regulatory board isn't going to like, but we're going to defend every one of them, and we will win because they're not doing anything wrong. But it isn't until that mass of people are doing it that it gets the attention for us to fight it, that the regulatory body starts saying, oh, okay, we're losing all of these. Maybe we should have a different approach to this issue. Right. So it's the numbers moving at the same time that really gets it done. Yes, the economics of our ability to pay for it, but just as important, if not more important, is the mobilizing of that sheer number of people in one direction that gets the work done. So that's really our vision.
I love it. I love it so much. We're donating for sure. And like you said, like there's lots of different organizations and stuff that are like, oh, just give me $10 or $20. But like I really, really think She Slayers that like, ugh, you should probably do this one. So thanks, Baron, for your time. I appreciate
Oh,
you. I
absolutely.
look forward to getting to see you again multiple times a year at
Absolutely.
UAC. And until next week, She Slayers. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. God bless.